Do you want to know the 5 most common mistakes I hear when I hear people speaking in English here in Brazil? I'm going to tell you, and I am Pete Guzik, but you can call me Pete. So, the 5 mistakes I hear all the time. Number 5, when people are speaking, they don't always use the pronoun that you have to have there. For example, in Portuguese, está frio. In English, it is cold. Kind of gets confusing when you hear a sentence without that pronoun. I hear it a lot. I see it written a lot too, especially. Maybe I even see it written more than I hear it. So there's number 5. Number 4, this versus that. Not just physically, like this book or that girl, but when people are writing or when they're speaking about the last thing that they were talking about, they often use the wrong verb, word, whatever you want to say. See, we all make mistakes, even the dumb gringos. You make mistakes and that's okay, but this versus that is one that it gets confusing when you're trying to figure out what the person's talking about, and that makes it more difficult.
Can you give an example?
When somebody is writing about in one of their papers to me, and they'll be talking about a person that they were discussing, and they'll say that person, even though it was the person who was in the last sentence that they were writing, it should be this person. Instead, they're using that because the Portuguese translation makes it be more, they use that versus this. Number 3, using the word make versus the word do. I know it's a translation thing. You know, fazer really means make, but in English, you have certain words that you use certain verbs to work with. Like, you don't make a test, you take a test. You can make a test, but you're actually writing the test then. If you take the test, that means I sat down and took the test. And you wouldn't really say you do a test. So it's common to see people using the translation of the verb rather than the correct form. Number 2, having an E on the end of a word doesn't mean you have to actually pronounce it. Let me give an example. When I first moved here, about 7.5 years ago, the most popular phone then, and it's really still today, but it was kind of new at the time, was the iPhone. But everyone here pronounced it iPhony, which made me think that it was just a fake phone because you have the word phony means fake, and I thought somebody had just put an Apple sign on the back and said, hey, here's your iPhony. And so it's kind of hard to understand sometimes because of that pronunciation, but also, they kind of Brazilianize it by doing it this way. You also have words that end with a consonant, but they add the E sound on there. So maybe it's just kind of the way that you look at the word and transform it into an English version of Portuguese. And so sometimes people say goody night, G-O-O-D, has no E on the end, but say they become goody. Number 1, this is the mistake I hear all the time, and I never heard it before I moved here. My parents, my mom was from Sweden, so we always had Swedes over at our house, or my dad worked for an international company. So whenever people would come from Europe, they would come to our house for dinner, and I never heard this mistake where people with a word that ends in ED say ED, like worked. I worked all weekend becomes I worked all weekend. And I couldn't figure out why. Until somebody said, here in Brazil and with Portuguese, we pronounce every part of the word. Every letter has a sound. Maybe some letters together will make a specific sound, but we say everything. And so then it started to make sense. So people say, I worked all weekend, I looked at something, and you have to make sure that you really just say looked or worked. Sometimes you have an exception. If the letter before ED is a D or a T, like I headed the ball, I said the ED part because of that D. Or if I live in a cold place, my apartment is heated, the T before the ED, so I say the ED then. You also have that sound that comes from inside and makes the D sound, like played. I played all day long with my kids. That's another sound that the ED ending makes. You have the T, the D, and the ed sound that come with ED. So these are 5 mistakes I hear a lot. You don't want to make those mistakes, do you? I don't think so. Tell Marcus how much you miss him. No. Did you like the video? Of course you did. tell us how much you like it. Like it, subscribe to our videos, click on that bell right there so ding, you'll get the next one. See you next time.